Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. He was waiting for the maid, but a poor girl arrived. The CEO's reaction shocked everyone. Jacob Harrison was an accomplished businessman whose name resonated in the corridors of power and finance in New York City. At 45, he ran a thriving multinational corporation, an empire built over the years thanks to his sharp intellect, unwavering rigor, and unwavering ambition. Each day for Jacob was meticulously planned, every minute counted. His schedule was brimming with meetings, crucial negotiations, and decisions that could swing millions of dollars. His relentless quest for perfection extended far beyond the office. Jacob was a demanding, almost manic man in every detail of his daily life. Whether it was the choice of his suit, the precise setting of his alarm clock, or even the impeccable cleanliness of his hotel suite, nothing escaped his critical eye. He expected the same efficiency, the same discretion, the same ability to anticipate his needs without a word from those around him, allowing him to maintain absolute control. That morning, arriving in one of the most prestigious suites of a five-star hotel in the heart of Manhattan, Jacob was preparing for a crucial meeting with international investors. Every detail had to be perfect: the room temperature, the arrangement of documents on the table, the condition of the electronic equipment, and above all, the impeccable cleanliness of the premises. He stood in the entrance hall, looking at his watch with a hint of impatience, when the door to the suite finally opened. But instead of the experienced maid he usually dealt with, a slight figure entered. A modest-looking young woman, barely out of her teens, dressed in a simple uniform, clearly worn by hours of hard labor. Her hesitant steps betrayed her inexperience. Her pale face and dark circles under her eyes showed accumulated fatigue, and an almost palpable apprehension seemed to invade her as she approached him. "Hello, sir," she said, her voice trembling, barely audible. "My name is Emily Turner. I've been working here for a while. I'm sorry if I kept you waiting." Jacob, usually harsh and impatient, felt a strange compassion rise within him as he looked at this young girl who seemed to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders. His eyes lingered on her hands, rough, marked by small cuts and calluses, silent witnesses to long days of labor under constant pressure. It wasn't a job she had chosen out of passion, but out of necessity. He could almost guess the sacrifices Emily made every day, the invisible responsibilities that weighed on her, far from the spotlight. Around them, the atmosphere was different. Several employees exchanged worried glances, whispering in hushed voices. "She doesn't belong here. She's too young, too inexperienced. This position requires professionalism, not naivete." The whispers hung like a heavy veil, an invisible barrier erected against her, based on hasty judgments and prejudices. But Jacob couldn't bring himself to do it. A voice inside him told him that this girl deserved more than a critical look. So, against all odds, he did something unexpected, almost audacious for a man of his rank and reputation. "Emily," he said softly, with a rare kindness in his tone, "it's not your appearance or your experience that matters here. What matters is your attitude and your heart. Show me how you work, and I'll help you improve." Emily, surprised by these words, felt a new warmth fill her heart. It was like a light, a spark of hope piercing the thick shadow of her difficulties. She had never received such a show of trust before. This simple gesture, this non-judgmental look, suddenly gave her the energy she needed to overcome her doubts. Without wasting a second, she set to work with fierce determination. Every detail, every gesture, she executed with care, almost like a silent promise not to disappoint. She cleaned every surface meticulously, arranged every object with precision, aware that every action counted, that every movement testified to her worth. Jacob watched intently, impressed by her seriousness and willingness to learn. There was something about her focus, her humility mixed with that inner strength, that deeply touched the businessman accustomed to performance, but rarely to authenticity. This suspended moment between them was no longer simply a matter of work or service. It was a human encounter, a silent lesson in courage and dignity. As the day progressed, as Emily busied herself around the suite, Jacob no longer simply watched her work in silent admiration. He felt the need to break the distance between them, to discover the person behind this courageous young woman. Between checking documents on his tablet, he gently engaged her in conversation, without abruptness, with genuine curiosity. "Emily," he said, sitting down in an armchair by the window, "tell me a little about it. What brought you here, to New York, to do this job?" Emily paused for a moment, a little surprised by this unexpected attention. Then, with a slightly sad smile, she began to speak in a soft voice, tinged with nostalgia. "I come from a small town in Mississippi, Jackson. It's a place where everyone knows each other, where dreams sometimes seem too big for reality. My mother has been ill for several years, and my brother is still in high school. I had to leave school early to work and help my family. Every dollar I earn counts. It's what pushed me to come here to New York, hoping to find a better life, even if it isn't easy." Jacob nodded, touched by this simple yet truthful story. He saw in it a part of his own past, those years when he too had had to struggle to get by. "I know what it's like to struggle, Emily," he replied, looking her straight in the eye. "I too started with nothing, in a small apartment, far from luxuries and privileges. But the difference is that I met people who believed in me, who saw beyond my mistakes and my difficulties. These people reached out to me when I needed it most. And today, I want to be one of those people for you." In the days that followed, Jacob didn't just pay lip service. True to his promise, he took Emily under his wing with the same rigor and commitment he devoted to his most ambitious projects. He no longer saw her as just a cleaner, but raw potential, a diamond still buried beneath layers of fatigue, doubt, and modesty. He personally contacted the hotel's human resources manager and insisted that Emily be assigned a crash course. He requested that she be assigned an experienced mentor, offered her access to evening courses in hotel management at a renowned Manhattan school, and covered all expenses without informing the press or using it as a publicity tool. For him, it was a personal, almost intimate, mission. "You have something you can't teach, Emily," he told her one evening after a work session. "Desire, inner fire. I simply want to give you the tools to turn that fire into light." Emily, at first incredulous, hesitant about each new opportunity, gradually began to believe. She spent her mornings in a hotel, her evenings at school, and her nights studying by the light of an old lamp in her tiny apartment. Her mother, despite her illness, regained hope as she saw her daughter's transformation. Her younger brother, inspired by Emily's example, regained his interest in studying. News of this unusual relationship spread quickly throughout the hotel. Some colleagues were initially suspicious, whispering that it wouldn't last, that Jacob would tire of it. But as the days passed, these doubts dissipated. Emily could be seen running from room to room with the same energy, but with more confidence. She could be seen asking questions of the older members, taking notes, suggesting improvements. Her transformation was real, and above all, contagious. Some employees began to follow his example, requesting training, and hoping for something other than routine. The atmosphere within the establishment subtly changed. It was no longer simply a cold, hierarchical workplace, but a space where advancement became possible, even for the most discreet. Emily, meanwhile, was growing. She stood up straighter when she walked, responded more firmly, smiled without apologizing. Her gestures, previously nervous, were becoming assured. Her voice, once timid, now carried in team meetings. Jacob followed her progress closely, silent but proud, like an architect watching his work rise stone by stone. And then, a few months later, came the unexpected but deserved day. Emily Turner was promoted to room service supervisor. The announcement was made at a staff breakfast. When her name was called, there was silence, followed by thunderous applause. Even the most skeptical could not deny the obvious. She had worked hard, and she had earned her position. Emily stepped onto the stage, moved, her voice trembling but clear. "I don't come from a background where people have access to these kinds of opportunities. But today, I am living proof that sometimes a single helping hand can change an entire life. Thank you to those who believed in me. I promise to believe in others in turn." Jacob, sitting at the back of the room, said nothing. But in his eyes shone something rare in him, a quiet, deep, and above all, human pride. One autumn evening, in one of the Waldorf Astoria's most elegant salons, a lavish reception was in full swing. The event was being hosted by Jacob Harrison's company to celebrate a stellar quarter, bringing together investors, partners, hotel executives, and employees from around the world. Chandeliers sparkled, crystal glasses clinked softly, and conversations were punctuated by hushed laughter, toasts, and refined music. Emily, wearing a simple but elegant dress given to her by management for the occasion, stood discreetly at the back of the room. She had never been invited to this type of event. Just being there seemed surreal. Yet tonight, she wasn't there to serve or clean up. She was invited. Invited as a professional, as an inspiration. At one point during the evening, Jacob spoke. He stepped onto the stage, dressed in a dark, understated suit, his familiar silhouette towering confidently over the room, but his gaze betrayed a rare emotion. He cleared his throat, and the conversations immediately ceased. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said in a calm but powerful tone, "tonight we are gathered to celebrate our economic successes. Our figures are impressive, our growth envied, our projects flourishing." There was a round of applause, but Jacob raised a hand and added, "Yet, that's not what I really want to celebrate tonight. What I want to honor is something that can't be quantified in an Excel spreadsheet. Something invisible, but fundamental. I want to celebrate strength, determination, and humanity. Those values that sometimes emerge in the most unexpected places." He paused. There was a growing curiosity in the room. "Emily Turner," he said, looking directly into the back of the room. "A young woman from nowhere. From Mississippi. She came into my life as a maid, at a time when I least expected it. But what she offered me wasn't simply a well-executed service. She reminded me that true luxury isn't gold, nor the numbers on a bank account. It's dignity. It's the will to fight for a better future, even when everything seems to be blocking it." A respectful silence filled the room. Then, slowly, the first applause sounded. It grew until it became a standing ovation. Emily felt a lump in her throat. Her eyes filled with tears, which she tried to hold back. This wasn't just gratitude. This was a turning point. All her life, she had learned to remain unnoticed, to not disturb, to blend into the background. And now a powerful, respected man had thrust her into the spotlight, not for her perfection, but for her resilience. She stood up slowly, her eyes misty, and bowed her head humbly. Several guests looked at her in admiration, some visibly moved to tears. At that moment, Emily realized her life had changed, not only because she had found a stable job, but because she had been offered something much rarer: sincere recognition, a human perspective, and the opportunity to dream of a future she thought was reserved for others. For his part, Jacob felt something stir inside him. It wasn't simple pride at having helped someone. It was deeper. Emily had shown him that empires could be built without ever losing sight of what gave it all meaning: humility. True leadership, he told himself, wasn't about dominating, but about seeing. Seeing those you never look at, and reaching out to them, not out of charity, but out of conviction. That evening, in the splendor of a world often blinded by the glitter of money, Jacob and Emily were symbols of an unexpected humanism, an improbable encounter, a silent promise that sometimes a single, just look can change two lives at once.